Thank you for tuning in to today's Back to the City. Today I'm joined by Anna Stine. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Simon. It's great to be here.
We're on the cusp of the release of Company of Now.
It is almost time for the Company of Now.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Paradoxically.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And we'll talk a lot about presence in the course of our conversation. But before we get in the Company of Now, a little bit more about the future. It's going to happen at the Hook and Ladder, the future.
We should call it the Company of Later.
The Company of Later, exactly. The company that we will have later is the Stellar Loons.
That's right.
And your full band.
Yep.
On October 28th, which is a Sunday.
It's a Sunday night.
At the Hook and Ladder.
Yep. And the Stella Loons will be singing some harmonies, some background vocals with me.
In your set?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so it'll be kind of one big night of collaboration.
Awesome.
I'm really excited.
That's great. Speaking of collaboration, who are some of the other musicians playing on the record?
Sure. So on guitar we have Robert Bell, and Robert Bell also produced and did some arranging on the record.
Nice.
And then on drums we have Andrew Dizzy Gillespie.
How did he become Dizzy?
Well, Diz Gillespie, his last name is
Sure.
Gillespie, and I
Yep.
think just kind of being in the music scene, he
quite
gained
dizzying.
that. Yeah, well, that too, yeah. So he kind of gained that nickname. And then on bass, Andrew Foreman played bass on the record, but he is, since kind of some of his other projects are really taking off, and he's been on tour all fall. So it will be Keith Yanis on the bass.
Some of those names I recognize from the special thanks list in the lyric book.
Yes.
Also on that list, Mum and Dad, My Big Brother, Teachers of Music and Life, and Discomfort.
Yes.
My favorite entry on that list is Discomfort.
It might strike you as odd.
Well, I'm reading lots of books that are celebrating discomforts at the moment, so maybe you've read some of the same books.
It could definitely be. I've read some that have kind of influenced the topics of this album.
Yeah.
So.
Which books have influenced the topics of this album?
Well, the number one that comes to mind is The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts.
Okay.
That really, when I read that, it was actually right as I moved to Minnesota and kind of launched a lot of the processing that led to the album.
Yeah.
And it just kind of created a shift in my thinking of embracing insecurity, embracing discomfort, embracing not knowing what's to come.
Why is discomfort something to be grateful for? Why are you grateful for discomfort?
I'm grateful for discomfort mostly because I think a lot of the experiences that I've sought out would not have been possible had I not embraced the discomfort or had uncomfortable experiences. It's led to my music, it's led to me moving to new places.
From Ohio?
Yep, from Ohio, yeah. So it just kind of has pushed me to do bigger things, to chase my dreams. And I think there's a lot to be said about seeking out uncomfortable experiences to grow as a human.
Because it breaks us out of our comfortable pattern?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of shakes things up, causes you to move a little bit.
Something else that causes one to move a little bit, or that one could move due to, is a bicycle.
Yeah.
Your bicycle is also on the special thanks list.
It is.
And gets featured on the opening
It
track.
does. You caught that.
So the beginning, the first sound that we hear is the wheel.
We recorded my bicycle
that is your
in
bicycle,
the studio
I would say.
at Creation Audio. It is my bicycle. Me and my bicycle are good buddies, I like to say. When I first moved here, the first thing I did was I bought a bicycle. And I didn't know anybody, so I just spent a lot of time biking around, getting around the city, around the lakes, of course. And it's just been a companion to me. Whenever I'm going through a tough moment, a lot of times I would just grab my bike and take it out and kind of be present with myself and with my surroundings.
Excellent. That begins to answer my opening questions about the opening song.
Yeah.
So there's this narrative to do with bicycles, but then, I run around in circles. I run just to find myself sometimes. So it seems like alongside the narrative about cycling, there's also this narrative about growth and self-discovery. In the second verse, do you find yourself oscillating between what's wrong and right? There's no wrong or right, So how do these two different strands in the song fit together for you in your life? The going for a ride at night on a bicycle and the exploring ideas of wrong and right, deciding that there is no wrong and right, and trying to find yourself by going in circles.
Mm-hmm.
How do those two threads relate?
Yeah, great questions. So I said before, a lot of times if I'm going through some type of inner struggle, the bicycle is an outlet for me. And just as a way to really be present with what's going on in my mind. I think so often it can be a tendency to distract ourselves with something else when there's something really heavy kind of ruminating and going in circles. So the going in circles, it's not only the physical metaphor of, going around the lakes or
the wheels going around.
Or the wheels going around, but also just that going in circles about what are my intentions here? What am I doing? Where am I heading in life? What's important to me? How can I change and grow?
So psychologically, going through a particular scenario, a same set of ideas.
Absolutely. And definitely some heartbreak in there too. I mean, I went through a couple breakups in the course of recording the album. And I think breakups are a great ground for self-discovery.
Yeah, I think breakups are great too.
I know! You learn so much about yourself. It's so fun. Honestly, once you get over the hump of oh, this sucks, there's so much that you can learn.
There's a component of laughing at the absurdity of the idea, but then there's also a lot of truth in that idea.
Totally.
In the second verse, actually, I toss and turn in bed at night, but I wake up right on time. So that's interesting, this other kind of turning. And I don't know if this is intentional, but this tossing and turning is happening not only in the opening track, but also in the final track.
Atlas Hands, yeah.
Yeah, that is intentional?
It is intentional.
So what is the reasoning behind that, or the significance of that?
Sure. So in the last 2 years, as I was writing these songs, something that kept coming up for me was arguing with myself about the idea that there is a right way and a wrong way. There's a right path and a wrong path. There's a right decision and a wrong decision. And I had become so locked into that polarity way of thinking, those two dialectics.
You thought that there was a right way and you had to find it.
And it caused me a lot of trouble. I think it caused some anxiety and depression and just this pressure on myself. And kind of going back to that book, The Wisdom of Insecurity and Discomfort. A lot of it for me was about accepting and shifting my thinking so that it's both and, that either way you choose, there's going to be something of worth. You're going to learn something or grow in some way. So that's that tossing and turning of what am I doing, but I wake up right on time. It's even in the midst of that going back and forth, I'm going to be okay. Things are going to work out.
So you're oscillating back and forth, and then perhaps you go on this track, and then things will be okay. You'll continue to grow, so long as you remain in the company of now.
Exactly, it's all tying together. Yeah, the last track is very much kind of that declaration of I stand tall, but I don't have Atlas hands. Kind of like.
What would Atlas hands be?
So Atlas hands is a reference to Atlas, the Greek man who held the earth, and that song is about setting things down and not feeling like you have to do it all, and not putting the pressure on yourself, and back to that both and concept, which kind of weaves in and out of the album, that you can be strong and you can be trying your hardest, and you can set things down and you can fail sometimes.
Yeah, and there's a virtue in not grasping at things and trying to hold and possess them.
Totally. Yeah. That comes up too.
Yeah.
Wow, you really dug in here. I like this. This is fun.
Nice. Yes, exactly. Even more fun than breaking up.
Yes, it's a little bit more fun than breaking up. Yeah, and we're going to learn something here. And
exactly. Other recurring images include walking and the ground. The ground is something that shows up.
It shows up a lot
at times. Beneath our feet.
Yes, it is a very steady theme. So as I was typing up the lyric books, I was kind of doing some of this in my head too, noticing how much the word feet comes up in my album, and that makes sense to me.
Why?
That has been a mantra and a phrase that has kept me going through a lot of stuff, is be where your feet are. A mentor of mine told me that several years ago. Step from where you're standing, that lyric exactly shows up And it's just something I repeat to myself to remind myself to be present right here, to not push anything away, to know that I can't be 20 steps ahead. I can't be the person or the artist or the friend or the daughter that I will be a year from now. I have to be...
Or the one that you were 2 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
There I'll go and there you'll be.
Yes.
Yeah, there I'll go. If my feet may bring me to a desert land, there I'll go. But if they bring me where the rain, it never ends, there I'll go. So again, we're oscillating, deciding what's right, what's wrong. Yeah. And then we find ourselves in a desert. And instead of thinking, oh no, I took the wrong route. I don't want to be in a desert.
Right.
Instead, I'll be in the desert, in the company of now, in the desert.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not going back home, which I think fits with the idea of not being able to be whatever we were before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Sometimes I think, though, it's easy to think back about a time that was better when you are in a hard time.
Of course.
And wish that you were there again.
We're in like the bad place. Let's imagine the desert or the place where it's raining is the bad place. Okay?
Yeah. I actually love the desert.
Okay,
though.
I like the desert too.
Yeah,
Like
and it's super cool because you think the desert is this scarce, lifeless land, but there's so much life in the desert.
Okay.
There's so much, and to me, that's kind of maybe more what resonated with me and why I got in that song was that things could be totally barren, but you can still have growth in those times.
Or especially in those times.
Especially,
yeah. Different.
Yeah, especially in those times. And it's that much more meaningful. Like the desert is that much more beautiful to me because of that fact.
So let's imagine that we're in a place that isn't the desert,
okay.
that we think is a bad place to be, and we have these memories of the porch swing, or of,
that's the dark one.
Yeah,
that's the dark track.
We're haunted by these images, to borrow from that song, of good times, even though, that particular narrative has played out and might have gone somewhere that we don't want to be. We still think there's this image, that was a good time, I'd rather be there. According to the books you've read, according to the thoughts that you've developed and this collection of songs, what would be a wise thing to do in the company of that kind of bleak now? You find yourself reminiscing and becoming nostalgic and just wanting to be back on the porch swing, which we'll talk about in a bit. But, what's the wise thing to do?
Well, that's a tough question. I don't know the right thing all the time.
Can you
what I try and practice is to, when you're reminiscing on something and it might be a good memory, but it brings you pain, right? Because you don't have that, you're not in that space anymore. I try and give space to just feel it, to just... especially feeling it in your body. That's been really helpful for me, like just digging into that pain that you feel, and then it lifts. You can trust that, well, I'll move on and be present with something else very soon. And I find a good friend of mine says, you gotta feel your feels so you stop feeling them. Like if you just don't feel it, it shows up in funny ways.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's
good advice. Okay, so we find ourselves becoming nostalgic and we're back on the porch swing. Swing on the porch swing.
Yeah, exactly. Take a moment to swing, but don't like glue your butt to the porch swing. You gotta like swing on the porch swing for a minute and be like, okay, I'm noticing how this makes me feel, and now I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna continue to walk and step from where I'm standing.
Nice. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So before we get up from the porch swing, let's stay on the porch swing.
Okay, let's stay on it.
I love sonically how this song in the chorus creates like the circular motion.
Yeah, the swinging.
Yeah, you swing me back and forth, and there you're sitting in the company. Is that intentional? Of the foggy moon. I
talked about. Yeah, you got to get up from the porch swing, theoretical porch swing, and move on. But sometimes I've found that you're just not ready yet. And you have to accept that and be present with that and give yourself the time you need to move through things. And with this particular situation that inspired this song, that was so true. It was like all of me knew that it was time to get up and move on and process and heal. But there were old narratives underneath that narrative that needed to be healed first.
Nice.
So it's kind of that deeper work of not only healing from the loss, but all the things underneath it that maybe make it harder to move on from.
What role does the songwriting, and maybe especially the writing of the song Porch Swing, play in that healing?
For me, songwriting is the number one way that I process experience, sadness, heartbreak. And I think as you look at the song and listen through, you can kind of see that processing happening. I never just sit down and like just kind of put a song out. It doesn't happen that way for me. It's the process as I'm moving through it, and then the song evolves from there.
I love that, you know, in this collection of songs about and celebrating being in the company of now, we do have Porch Swing, which is acknowledging moments where we because we're sitting in the company of a foggy moon, we find ourselves being brought back to the company of before, or then, and then the feet get a cameo in Porch Swing, but they're not listening. My feet, they never listen.
Exactly.
So even though you've read those books, you've come to those conclusions. I love that the record documents the difficulty of implementing those conclusions.
It wouldn't be authentic if it didn't.
Yeah.
And there are, I think, 3 or 4 songs that kind of highlight that. It's like, yes, I know all these things. Yes, I know to be present, and it's a practice, and it doesn't always happen. And you can know something and intend to live that way, but putting it into action every day is a totally other thing.
You said it wouldn't be authentic if it didn't do that. Authenticity gets a shout out in There I'll Go. When you grasp with all your might, all authenticity dies. So that's an interesting moment too, I think, where as soon as we recognize something that might be good for us, or a new, so we're thinking, what's good for me, oh, this might be good. Like, let's say there's good and bad. There's good and bad things to do. Even if we're right, then as soon as, then knowing that that's good could make everything wrong.
Yes. Why is it so
grasp
complicated? Exactly.
Yeah. Is that a recurring focus then? This idea of the relationship between grasping and the death of authenticity? There's all kinds of ways that authenticity could die.
That's true.
Through focusing too much on the mantra without its applicability to life and forgetting about the porch swing. Through grasping at the good new thing and therefore failing to see it in the present.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. To me, in my experience, when we cling to something, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we don't see it fully. We kind of suffocate the reality of it. And this is another one of those things I try and practice as much as possible. But, you know, obviously it's so easy to have an idea we cling to or a person we cling to. And I try as best I can to walk that middle path.
The middle path between what and what?
Between clinging and not giving a shit.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
exactly. Yeah, no, that's great.
Feather. That's one of the older songs on the album. Probably before I read Wisdom of Insecurity.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element to that song of maybe feigning that you don't give a shit. Well, you can't teach a feather how to fly. Like, I'm just going to let it go.
The feather is a person. A person that is the fleeting feather that will fly away without heed. And a not fully reliable person. That doesn't stand on their 2 feet.
There's feet again.
There's feet again.
Yeah, the feather actually has since turned out to be multiple people, which has been interesting. So talking about processing through songwriting, that's been one of these songs that I continue to come back to as a, like, why do these people keep coming into my life? Why does this keep happening? I think anytime there's a pattern, it is good to kind of dig in a little bit
to
more.
Recognize that, ruminate on it, on your bicycle.
On my bicycle, that's when I go on my bicycle. There I'll go.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's something feather-like about most of us, if not all of us.
Absolutely. I'm probably the feather to someone
yeah.
or some people, who knows.
So you can't teach a feather to fly, you can't teach a feather to stand on its feet. There's very few things that a feather can do.
There are very few things. They are only useful
around.
when they're attached to something.
Right, yeah. Let's look at the first verse, which is also the last verse of feather.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a full circle.
Yeah, maybe symbolically. Circles seem to be important in the
They
Bible.
are, absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of coming back to it again and again and again.
Yeah. The flowers must bloom at midnight for you. I would wait up till the break of dawn if I knew that was true. And then the moon again, actually. When I see the moon up in the summer sky, I'll always think of you. So it's quite similar to Porch Swing in some ways then.
Mm-hmm.
There's a risk of being brought out of the company of now. And then here that's remedied, or there's an attempt to remedy it.
Yeah, there's some acceptance that comes with, well, you can't teach someone how to do this or that. I don't know how specific
so
to be.
It stops being a criticism of the person and more just a truth.
Yes, it's more just coming to terms with really that you can't change someone.
Or you can't control the process of changing someone. What's Feather saying about yourself? So, we want to not be a feather. Each of us. I mean, I want to not be a feather.
I don't want to be a feather.
Exactly. Don't want someone to write this song about me.
No, I know. Oh, yeah.
So, but you always have yourself to lean on, and next time I fall, I'll know better.
But I didn't.
Hence the circle. We find ourselves
Hence
back
the
in
circle.
But maybe next time.
Maybe next.